You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and today is an amazing treat. Y'all, we have Whitney Johnson of Real Muvahood, and that's M-U-V-A-H, Motherhood, coming to you live today talking about how for mothers to avoid burnout. And I'll start with saying, yes, we're talking about motherhood and burning out, but this is not just for mothers. So don't tune out because you're not a mother. I got so many amazing tips from Whitney. You know, in the childcare industry, she's known as the preschool whisperer, but she's way more than that. And I just love everything about her energy and what she brings and just her edginess. And so she has this proprietary program that she calls the Mother Method, where she helps mothers to truly find themselves through motherhood. And so today, make sure you have your pens and paper out because she is going to give you guys so many amazing tips. Again, you don't have to be a mother. We all deal with burnout. We all have that experience. And so I learned so much, again, myself from talking to her. So I'm super excited to her. So before we start, I want to shout out our sponsor. Today's show is coming from Rogue Experiences, which is a travel company for women of color who are busy and overworked and are ready to push the pause button and travel and go on an intimate trip that mixes culture, sisterhood, and self-care all in one. So make sure you check out Rogue Experiences at rogueexperiences.com, as well as on IG and Facebook. They have an amazing Facebook group that's called the Women of Color Travel Therapy. So, all right. Let's get ready seriously, we're about to get ready to get our lives together because it's time is now is how to avoid burnout. Let's go. Welcome, Whitney, to the show. How are you?
I feel amazing. I'm so happy to be here.
I am super happy to have you on here right now. This is such a great topic, especially right now, because I have been talking to so many of my friends who are mothers who burnout is so freaking real. But before we start, I kind of want to ask, can you tell us a little bit of about your journey? Like, how did you get to, running your business and, how did you get to the point of being the mother that you are, that it helps other mothers learn how to breathe and just live the life that they want to live?
All right. So it all started back when I was about 21 years old. I really feel like I was the original hot girl, but I let Megan have her spotlight. But when I was young, I was really carefree. I didn't really have many responsibilities. I was just kind of doing my own thing. And I think right when I hit 21, I became pregnant with my son. And my life completely shifted. Like I went from going out, partying, hanging out with my friends to having to adapt this new lifestyle. And while I had this lifestyle change and everything like that, I had a lot of my family members telling me that you weren't going to be a good mom because you were so used to being the party girl. You're so used to doing these things. And so I tried so hard to prove them wrong. And so I put more things on my to-do list. I had laundry and the cooking and the cleaning and the doing everything for everybody and going places. And I had so many things on my to-do list, and it literally put me into a place where I was up against a wall. But coming from the way that I came from, I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to say, hey, this is tough. I need some help with this. I really didn't know how to do that. And so it took me literally up against the wall and eventually being hospitalized for postpartum depression for me to realize that motherhood was more than just doing things for my kids and showing up for everybody. It was way deeper than that. And so when I was hospitalized for postpartum depression, I had to figure out what it would take for me to get out. Because while being hospitalized, I was also suicidal at that time because I was so burdened down by the stresses of motherhood. Yeah. And so it took me figuring out what did I want motherhood to look like for me. I didn't care about what everybody else expected me to be. I didn't care about what everybody else's expectations were about motherhood. I had to recreate my own identity in motherhood. And so I started picking up the pieces and figuring out what was significant about my journey and just completely owning it. And then eventually I took a 5-step process that I like to call the mother method. And I used that to navigate from where I was to where I am now. And I really feel like now I've been able to reclaim my time and just be in a better position as the mother of my children.
No, I love that. We all, whether you're a mother or not, and that's what I wanted to also preface the show is like, yes, Whitney talks from a mother's standpoint, but let's keep it real. We've all experienced burnout to some way or another, but we don't always recognize a sign. The way I like to look at, burnout, because we do experience it, it's like a slow leak in a tire. You're driving along, you're totally fine. The tire looks fine, but little by little, it's leaking its energy, its air to the point to where it just is depleted. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I'm freaking burnt out. But like not even all crap because 9 to 10, oh crap, I don't know what's wrong with me, but something is wrong. So like what are the signs of being burnt out that you kind of seen?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think a lot of times when it came to my own situation, it took me a while to even recognize it. I
Yeah.
didn't even recognize it because I was so used to this image of being a strong Black woman and having to just continue to push through and persevere because I had women around me who that's the narrative, like that was the thought process of all of us. And so I thought something was wrong with me because I needed help. And so for me, I didn't even know how to identify what was going on to me until I was laying in the bed crying and could not control it.
No, that makes so sense because it's one of the things where we are taught we aren't strong. We aren't good women if we aren't strong. Like, how dare you ask for help? Especially as a mother, it's like if my mother was able to do it without help, why? What? You're weak, and that sucks. Like so, but like, were you seeing certain? I know it's hard to see the signs, but were you like seeing things like maybe insomnia? Like, how did you recognize at what point?
Yeah, good one. So like that's one of the things that I started to realize. Like at nighttime, I would stay up because I felt like that was my me time, but really it was draining me because then the next morning I would wake up and I was exhausted and I was snapping with my kids and it was a cycle. It just kept happening and every day I felt like I don't like the way that I'm being a mother. I don't enjoy being a mother. It's just something I'm doing. I'm just going through the motion. And I was just like, is motherhood actually supposed to feel like this? And so I
Yeah.
think for me, it was those little signs of just feeling tired, of just feeling like, where's the light? Where is my happy ending? Where's the fun that they say is so much when you have children? I didn't see it. I didn't feel it. And so those
Yeah.
things led me to believe that there was something wrong.
No, and I hear that from my friends who are mothers. Like a lot of women who go on our Rogue Experiences trips are mothers, and that's one of the things we do talk about a lot of the time is being burnt out. The irritability where they love their kids. Like I know you love your kids too, but you're like it's almost quasi resentful because like I just like I love you, but you are draining the ever blinking life out of me. And they talk about being irritable. They talk about not enjoying the things they used to enjoy. They're tired. They're not eating as loss of appetite. Like all these different things that I hear about that we all experience. And I don't know about you, but in my experiences of being burnt out, one of my signs was I found myself just drinking. Not to the point where I was an alcoholic, but it was like every day it was like my way of quote unquote coping was to have a glass of wine or bourbon every single day. And it was like I wasn't having several glasses. It was one glass. So no one called me out for an alcoholic. I'm saying that one more time. But that was my way of coping until I got to the point where it's like, this ain't working. Like it doesn't matter even if I try to drink more, this is not working. And so it was just like I just couldn't get myself out of it. And so like, I know you see the signs, but seeing the signs is great, but what do you do when you see the signs? Cuz like being burnt out is not like the flu. It's not going to just go away on its own. It's not like, "Oh, I've recognized it. Now you're going to go away." Like what are tips to like people can do to try to avoid being burnt out?
So I go back to my own story because that's the easiest way that I can kind of paint the picture.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember like when I really had that one-on-one mindset with myself, and I was just like, oh my God, girl, something is wrong with you. And I was laying on my bed and I could barely pick my head up, and I was like, okay, there's something that I need to do to get out. I'm not feeling like myself. I'm feeling lost. I feel like in a dark, dark place. And so the first thing that I did was I knew that I had to change my mindset. I knew that there was something I had to do to change my mindset. And that's the first letter of the mother method is mindset. I had to change the way I view motherhood for me. I couldn't view it like my mom viewed it. I couldn't view it like my grandmas and aunties. I couldn't view it that way. I had to create my own narrative. And so I had to go through that thought process of what is it that I want motherhood to feel like for me. Then after I did that, I started to uncover what it was that was unique and significant about who I was. I had to find out my own identity. And so the U in the Mother method stands for uncover because you really need to uncover your value, your significance, and your importance. And then after you do that, you want to validate those experiences. Make sure that you go back to those scenarios in your head where things were happy, where you were feeling great, where people were applauding you and cheering you on. What did those feelings feel like? Validate them. Go back to them. Affirm new things for yourself. And then after I did that, I started to activate them. Like I said a few minutes ago, I was affirming more things for myself. I started to get around communities where people would activate something deeper within myself that I didn't see in myself. And then finally, I asked for help. I asked for
How
help.
was that? Like, how did you feel, especially in the beginning times? Because, okay, after you've done it several times, you probably get a little bit better. But in the beginning, how did you push yourself to ask for help? Like, how did you do that part?
I realized for me that although I had so many narratives about how motherhood is supposed to be from my mom
Mhm.
and grandmas, I knew that that didn't work. It just did
Yeah.
not work. No matter how many times I try to just keep going and keep being strong and work more hours, and it just was not working for me. And I just felt like the more and more I tried to do it their way, the further and further I got down to the bottom. And I just said, I got to create a new narrative. I got to create a new narrative. And so I literally had to surrender to trying to do everything and just taking the next best step. I know I need more time, but what's the small thing that I can do? What's the small thing that I can delegate to somebody else and say, hey, can you help me with this? You know, it's like finding those little steps, those little things that you can change or alter. And then once you start working on those little things and start asking for the help with the little things, you won't feel so bad about asking help for bigger things and moving differently through motherhood. But you first need to start with the small things. What's the small thing that you can do now that can push you forward and give you some momentum to get to where you want to go?
Yeah, and I think that's a great step, and a great tip for women to realize it's like, okay, start with asking for small things. Like, hey, can you, help like clean this up or little things instead of going for like the bigger things. And I think the more practice you get, you start getting more and more comfortable asking for help. One of the things I was thinking about was like, for me, I'm getting better at asking for help, but I don't always do it well. But like, it's one of the things someone told me that you should ask for help early and often and be kind. And I love those tips is like, asking early. So it's like, it's not like last minute because your emergency is not someone else's emergency,
Mm.
which we often will do. Like, oh my God, I need you to pick up the kids now because I'm doing something else. And so it's like having like, you know, we don't control someone else's schedule, but also being able to ask, often. And so that was the part that was like, oh, I was like, I don't ask often because again, it goes back to, well, what will they think about me? Am I not strong enough if I have to ask for help? But we are. I
Mm.
mean, I think you're stronger when you do ask for help. So when you first started asking for help, how did you feel? Like, did you start feeling like, were you feeling kind of like, oh, my chest feels tight? Or did you feel like, yes, I did this?
I had a mixture of both. I think I had a mixture of both because in the back of my mind, I still replay all those things from, you got to be strong. You
Yeah.
being lazy. Don't sit here on this couch and let somebody clean your house up for you. What are you doing? Get up. But as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that my body finally feels relaxed. I'm
Right.
realizing that I finally get a breath to have a genuine conversation with my husband. I can actually play with my kids without being stressed out about my kitchen and dishes being piled up. And so it's weighing out the good with the bad, like, okay, yeah, this may be something that I used to think about myself, but I need to pay attention to how I feel. It's all about that feeling. And when you tap into what you want it to feel like, somehow the situation kind of changes, when you focus on the feeling rather than, the other thing.
And how did you get yourself to even focus on the feelings? Was it just because you felt like you hit such rock bottom in your own world? I'm not saying you hit rock bottom, but like, what made you get to that point of like, okay, I'm going to focus on feelings versus other things?
The one thing that made me focus on my feelings was the fact that I never did. I would always do so much for everyone else,
Hmm.
and I never paid attention to my feelings. And part of my way of finding myself in motherhood was to pay more attention to myself. I had to figure out how can I focus more on me, because that's the one thing that was missing. My kids had everything they needed. My house was clean and my laundry was done, but what about me? So I was intentional about finding that time to reconnect with myself. How do I feel today? Did I eat today? Did I get enough rest? Instead of me having these long to do this for my kids, I started making those self care lists for myself and paying attention to how I felt when I did little things to make me feel happy.
Yeah, and I think the basics are, I think, one of the first things to go. People, women especially, when we get into these stress modes or we get into we're not taking care of ourselves, we forget to eat, sleep, and drink. And we do everything else but that. One thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because like, how can we have a conversation about moms and not talk about this? Is it's mommy guilt.
Mm.
It's real. It is real, and I've seen people struggle with it, and it's a hard thing to get past. How do you deal with it, and how did you work on getting past it, and more so or less?
Okay, so the one thing that I did was I released the expectations. I
Oh,
released all the expectations of what people told me. I released the expectations of what I thought it was supposed to look like. I released the expectations of everything, everything that I had been taught as a child. I released it. I don't care about that anymore. I'm creating my own path. And so when I started to get that in my head, I no longer felt bad about the dishes being. I no
mhm.
longer felt bad about, taking a nap while the kids watched a little bit of cartoons. I didn't feel bad about those things because I didn't have an expectation of what motherhood had to look like. It was all about what I wanted. It was all about what I needed. It was my own identity through motherhood. And I think that that's what was the trigger for me is I don't want anybody else's expectations. I only want to do what feels right for me. And so what that did was it helped me create harmony within my household. A lot of times people always talk about creating this work and home, life balance and everything like that. But to be honest with you, you'll never find complete proportions in both areas. You're either going to give one a lot of attention and the other one's going to have to take a back seat for a few minutes or vice versa. So instead of creating this false image of balance, focus on creating harmony by releasing the expectations. Don't
I
have any
love that.
none.
So I totally, totally love that, and I think expectations it's funny, my niece is listening to this, she's gonna get mad, because I talk about expectations all the time to her, and it's like she's like, "Well, I hope." I'm like, "That's expectation. I hope you're trying to control something you can't control, and you have these expectation is trying to control." And oftentimes, there's so much healing and power in learning how to surrender control, but it's also one of the hardest things for all of us to do. And it's great that you found a way to release your expectations, but obviously you're married and you have a husband, and there's two people in this relationship, and I'm sure he had his own expectations of what a wife and a mother was supposed to be like. How did you work on resetting his expectations of you as a mother? Or did you
So
have to?
I did. I did.
Okay.
In the beginning, we both had this expectation of me being Superwoman. And I think for him, he witnessed me being hospitalized for postpartum depression, and he really could not understand why I could not ask for help. But I literally did not know how. And so I think the biggest thing for me was being able to learn how to communicate my needs. I didn't
Yeah.
even know how to communicate my needs. I didn't know how to open my mouth up and say, hey, I need help with this. This is challenging for me. And so it took us creating a new narrative between the two of us. Like, how are we going to communicate with one another when we feel exhausted? How are we going to communicate with each other when we're feeling overwhelmed? We both need a break from the kids. What is our strategy for making more time for the things that matter to the both of us so that we can create our own narrative for what parenthood should look like for us? So while I was creating a identity for myself as a mother, I was also recreating a new identity for our family and for our children as well. It was just like a kind of like a ripple effect.
Yeah, and you talk about it. I've heard you talk about it. I love your Instagram. Your Instagram is amazing. You're just real, and I think people need to see that. I don't think people need to see the Mary Poppins version of someone helping get their kids right. But you talk about the importance of the family structure. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I'm a firm believer that our childhood experiences help to shape who we become as
Yeah.
adults. As a child, I was always told that, you have to sit right, you have to know all your Bible verses. You have to always, all the things, right? And there was always this box that I had to fit into. And so I grew up thinking that I always had to fit the mold. I always had to fit the mold. And so then, as I became a mother and as I grew into my motherhood, I realized that I was projecting those same things on my children. I wanted them to fit into a box. I wanted them to be one way or do things this way. But the reality of it is, we can't expect for them to fit into the mold of what we want them to be. And so it's so important for us to connect with them beyond what we feel like we need to connect with them through. So we want to connect with our children based on stuff that they're actually interested in. We want to connect with them based on things that they actually enjoy and really tap into their world, because this is what helps strengthen the relationship. And while you're helping your child to create their own identity, you're also learning more about yourself and healing from past experiences that you've experienced in childhood as well. So it's more like a ripple effect. And that's why relationships within the household are so important, because you're all feeding and working off each other, your teachers and students to each other. And so when you tap into those relationships and you are really, really intentional about developing them and growing them, you not only enhance your life, but you also teach your children to create their own identity so that they don't have to go through these things when they become adults and have their own children. You break that cycle.
Yeah, I love that. And then there's the cycle is real. If you kind of think about it, even the superwoman mentality, goes back to slavery when, the Black woman had to do everything. She had to work in the field or cook in the kitchen. She was, being raped by the master. She had to breed a bunch of kids, take care of those kids, and all these different things, and have her kids sold away. And she had to be okay with it. And
Mm.
so we pass down these different traumas that a lot of us don't even know that our ancestral trauma plays a huge role in how we show up as parents, but how we show up as people. And, I got to the point where I realized I can't blame my parents for how my childhood was, because they did the best that they could, because they had their own trauma from their parents and their parents' parents and parents' parents. And it's like someone needs to break the cycle. And I love that you're helping break the cycle for so many generations that are coming on and helping women now stop this cycle. I think that's so beautiful because it's so needed right now.
It's so needed. And a lot of times we feel like we can't break the cycle, right?
Yeah.
Because once you're brave enough or you so-called have the guts to do it, then people, oh, you change, oh, you're acting funny, oh, you're this and you're that. But you have to realize that this is a part of creating your own narrative, and your self-care is non-negotiable. So if you have to create those boundaries with people while you navigate towards something greater for your family, then that's what you have to do. These are the type of things that can seem uncomfortable, but this is literally how you teach people how to treat you so that you can get to where you're trying to go and you can live an actually happy life.
You bring up some great points. You brought up the fact of, you know, people are going to be haters. Haters are going to be haters. There's just life. And so, especially when you start changing and start taking care of yourself and you start showing up for you, which is not always the norm. People are like, oh, she's acting funny. She's, she's changing. She's doing this. And then they get real salty in those situations. I love that you said that those are times where you need to create boundaries, but not only creating boundaries, you need to show people how you expect to be treated.
Exactly,
I,
because if you don't teach people how to treat you, they literally will take advantage of your time. They will take advantage of your energy. They will take advantage of the fact that they feel like they can just do what they've always done because that's
yeah.
just what they've always done. So you have to create a new narrative if you want things to shift.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's so important and just so important. I think for me, especially this year, I've been really working on creating healthy boundaries as a caregiver. Like, I don't have kids, but I'm taking care of my parents and learning how to create boundaries even in those situations. So, as a parent, how are you creating boundaries with your kids so you have your own time, but you also want them to know that mommy loves you?
Okay, this is really good. So I'm going to share a quick little hack that I think would definitely benefit your listeners. So one thing that I do that works really, really good for my children, I have a 10-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and I have a 1-year-old. And
Girl, that's a lot of kids.
it's a lot of
A
churn.
lot.
So one of the things that I do is I have to have my mornings. My mornings are everything. I'm a morning person, but I need like coffee. I need to meditate. I need to journal. I need those things. Like I just have to have it. They're non-negotiables for me. And so one of the things that I do with my children is they have alarm clocks. And so in the morning, they don't come out of their room until their alarm clock goes off.
Even
And
the
so,
1-year-old? I'm
yes,
joking.
yes,
Well, no, please tell me the 1-year-old doesn't have an alarm clock. Because, like,
yes.
what genius do you
So
have?
So, and this goes back to boundaries. You teach your children how to treat you too. When they see that your mornings are important for you, they know not to bother mommy until that alarm clock goes off. And so what I do is they each have an alarm clock in their room and they understand because my 1-year-old shares a room with his sister, 1 and 4.
Okay.
So that works out better for them. But you can still do it with the 1-year-old. But
I love you.
you know, you can do it. So you use the alarm clock and you would put the alarm clock in your room and you would set it for whatever time that you need in the mornings. And so once that alarm clock goes off, then we start our day and we start together. But by that time, I've done the things I needed to do. I've taken care of myself and I'm ready and prepared to jump into my day. But it took me teaching them that boundary. So when they wake up in the morning, it's not jump out of the room and run into mommy's room. No, you get out of your own bed. You make your clothes. You put your clothes on. You can put your bed together and play with your toys quietly until mommy comes and gets you. So it's just teaching them boundaries and helping them understand that this is how our day is going to go. So they have their time to themselves. I have time for myself, and we create a better, peaceful harmony within our household, within our
Oh my God. I know my sister-in-law wishes she had you. Because I'm like, I'm not even gonna go further than that, but, like, even my parents probably wish that they had you, like, because I was that kid who boundaries, what's that? I'm like, "The door is closed, it just means you just open it." So my parents learned how to lock the door. I'm like, "Why is the door locked?" I'm like, "What are you doing in there? Open the door."
And that's another one. Another time, like even when couples are trying to have sex and stuff like that, like your children need to know boundaries. Like if your door's closed, they need to know to knock on the door. Like create those boundaries, create that structure and those rules so that you don't have to compromise your intimate time or whatever you want to do. They need to understand boundaries so that they can understand respect and you don't have to worry about finding time for yourself.
Yeah, I didn't know the boundary. I walked in on them once. I was like, "Oh, my eyes, my eyes." I was like, "Lord Jesus, like, why is she on top?" I'm like, "What the fuck is she doing?" Um, yeah, but we don't talk about that moment. It did not happen. So,
Yeah,
like, you talked about I love how you have a morning routine because a morning routine is so, so, so important. I also believe an evening routine is just as important. I don't know if you have one as well.
yeah, I have both.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, for me, I think, and that's one of the things that I offer people. I actually created an ebook just on morning and evening routines because it truly sets your day up for productivity and for success and happiness. But I think when you don't create that routine in the morning and you're going willy-nilly, it's like you can go any which way. But I love that you do that. So what are other ways that mothers can pour into themselves? Like we always talk about, having this empty cup. How can you pour back into yourself to make sure that you're not on empty?
Well, we go back to boundaries. And another thing that I really, really highly recommend is quiet time, is teaching
Yeah.
your children how to create quiet time. They don't always need to have something to do. They don't always need to have an electronics in front of them. Teach them the importance of sitting with themselves. Because when they understand how to sit with themselves, then they will understand why you get to sit with yourself. They'll realize in you sitting with themselves as self-care is something that's the norm. So you normalize these things. And so when you teach these boundaries to your kids, you can make that quiet time for yourself to maybe polish your nails, or you can make that quiet time to maybe read a few pages out of the book. Because while you're reading your pages out of your book and doing your own thing, maybe your kids are sitting quietly doing blocks, or we're listening to some sweet jazz music or something like that in the background while we're doing something. But it just teaches them the importance of respecting your boundaries. It teaches them that it's okay to give me a break because we all need a break. And so this goes back to creating harmony within a household. It's teaching them what is expected, why it's expected, and why this is important for everyone in our home.
I love it. Um, I know right now a lot of mothers are, working from home and taking care of the kids, cooking. They're not becoming, quasi teachers as well, or, principals, security. You're not in class. It's a lot. I'm watching it and I'm seeing people drink more because again, that's the go-to for burnout. And just I'm seeing the conversations. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was like, "Girl, It's 8. Yes, I'm in bed with my bonnet because this is so much." Like, are there any tips, especially for mothers who are working from home in the pandemic and dealing with their kids and their husband and everything else that you have?
I think the main thing that I always tell people is don't hold back on your me time. This is the time when you have to rev it up because there's so many things coming at you from so different directions. And so one of the best things that I can say for you to do is really look at and map out what it is you're doing all day. What is it that you're doing? What are the things that you are assigned to do or you have put into your mind that you have to do on a regular basis? And then as you're looking through that list, look and point out how many of those things are being done that are benefiting you. How many of those things will actually help you feel good? How many of those things will make you feel happy? How many of those things will help you be more productive and keep showing up for your children? What are those things that you have that you can actually say, okay, if I do this, this will definitely help me with the kids by doing da 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 da. So it's really getting clear on what are you doing all day? What are you doing all day? And where are those loopholes within your day where you can incorporate more time for yourself? Because if you aren't okay, the pandemic and the school and all the other things are going to wipe you clean out. You have to figure out what is it that you can do to make more time for you. So that would be my main suggestion for moms is just to really get clear on where you spend all your time.
Girl, I think more the mothers can use something like, where am I spending my time outside of Whole Foods, which I live at? Um,
Right.
but yeah, no, trying to take care, like, because, my parents need to do certain things certain days. They have, I try to get them on a schedule for, their doctor's appointments, but they're like, nope, I scheduled it this day. I'm like, but I told you these are the days. And so having adult kids is a whole
Mm-hmm.
other conversation. But, and getting the schedule, I think, is so key. I love you because you are giving our listeners a beautiful gift. Can you let us know what you are providing them to make sure that they are making it through the pandemic like champs?
Yes, so I am giving away a pandemic planner playbook. And so what this playbook is going to do is basically going to give you the ins, the outs, the things that you can do to help you navigate through this pandemic without going completely crazy. I know that the overwhelm from, the motherhood duties, the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning, all the things are like super overwhelming. And then people are trying to homeschool. And so I created a full playbook on things that you can actually do to help navigate through this whole pandemic. And if they want to get a copy of it, they can go to realmotherhood.com. That's MUVAH, motherhood.com/playbook.
And so that's great segue. So how else can they find you? Because again, I want to make sure people are paying attention because your Instagram is fire. It is like you just are real talk. And that's why I really like, I was like, I have to have her on the podcast because she just speaks such truth in such an easy way. And I think we just need to hear it. And again, what you're saying applies to mothers and it's very important to mothers, but it applies to so many just women in general, especially women of color who we have this mentality that we have these expectations that we have to do better than everyone else. And which is why I've been creating this, wellness or self-care revolution because it is self-care and taking care of ourselves is not a luxury. Now
Mm-mm.
is the time more than ever. This pandemic, there's a report that came out of talking about, jobs being lost. And it was the Black women who were most likely in those jobs. They're about to lose their jobs or, having all these different stresses. So I think what you're doing is so, so important. So how can people find you and make sure that they're following you?
Yes, they can find me on Instagram at WBH Johnson. I can be found there.
Great. All right. So one thing I do on every episode, Whitney, is I have a round of like quick fire questions. So I'm going to ask you the questions. Don't worry, there's nothing personal. I'm not asking for social security number yet. I'm joking. I'm asking for social security number. So my first question is, what does living hella well mean to you?
Oh man, living hella well is literally not giving up. Can I curse on you?
Yeah, you can. This is an adult show. Did you not?
Literally not giving a fuck about all the other identities of what people say your life should look like. Making it true to what you want it to look and feel, period.
Yes. I'm like, yes. That's my Nene Leaks. Yes, sis. Yes.
Yes.
I love that answer. I'm like, oh, that felt good. All right. So aisle or window?
Ooh, I'll take a window seat. Yes, I like windows. I like to look and see and view. Yes, windows. What about a window?
Girl, right now I'm a window seat because it keeps me away from all those people on the plane who might be having cooties and other things coming down the aisle. So what is always in your travel bag?
It's probably lip gloss. I love lip gloss. I actually sleep in lip gloss. So I always have to have some lip gloss nearby. I love lip gloss. And it's like the only makeup I know how to do. So lip gloss it is.
I'm not a makeup girl, but I have a friend who has an amazing, she's a Black-owned business makeup company, Babs Beauty, who's amazing. So I love, love, love her lip gloss. You should actually check her out. She's amazing, Nisha. And then my last question to you is, what advice would you give to your younger self about taking care of herself?
Surrender to expectations. Let it go. Let it go. You will never be able to fit into everybody's mold. And so the more and more you try to do it, the worse and worse things are going to feel for you. You have to release. You have to surrender. I cannot live up to anybody else's expectations.
Girl, I felt that so much. And like, ooh. I heard Erica, let it go, let it go, let it go. I need to really stop singing on this show because I cannot sing. But like I felt that because it is such an important message. Like, yo, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I honor you. I respect you. I love you. Continue helping us break these generational traumas and, taking care of ourselves, but also teaching our kids how to take care of themselves and have an identity that shows that they can and are worthy being who they want to be and breathing.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I really appreciate this.
Love you, girl.
Love you too.
Ciao. Thank you guys again for joining us. Make sure you follow Whitney on her social media and you grab her playbook for parents for the pandemic. Will be in the show notes. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week for another great episode of, at least I'm calling it a great episode. I'm manifesting it right now. Hello Well with Danielle podcast. I'll talk to you guys later. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hella Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hella Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.